Hey, what's up? Today, we're looking at the Polyend Press, which is a brand new stereo analog compressor from Polyend. We're going to jump right into it and cover some compression basics, so feel free to use the chapter markers below to kind of navigate based on your current knowledge of compressors. We're going to do a little crash course here. So quickly, I think it's important to kind of address what compression is and what it does. It's basically a technique where you can kind of rein in the dynamic range of an audio signal, bringing down its peaks, increasing the overall loudness with makeup gain, and just making things a little bit more punchy, as it were. It helps to blend things. It really can take the disparate elements of a composition and make them sound like they belong together without relying too heavily on mixing. That is the very explain like I'm five rundown. But let's get into the controls. The threshold of a compressor will set the level at which the effect starts to take place. So you can see this meter showing gain reduction. When I turn the threshold down, it's going to reduce lower volumes, as in it's lowering the threshold of the volume that it will compress. If I turn it up, it's not going to compress anything. The threshold is so high that the input is not surpassing the level we have set. Let's give ourselves a little compression here. Next, the ratio is going to determine by which extent that audio signal is reduced. Ratios are expressed in, you guessed it, ratios. So this knob starts at a 2-to-1 ratio. That means for every 2 decibels that the threshold is exceeded, the audio will be reduced by 1 decibel. And this is a ratio. It's not for every 6 decibels it will be reduced by 1 decibel. If you have 2-to-1, that would be 6-to-3. So if you have something that exceeds the threshold by 6 decibels, it will reduce the gain by 3 decibels. Let's take a listen. Let's make our threshold a little bit more intense. Here you can see we have very gentle compression. But as we turn up the ratio, things start to get really squished. As you can hear, if we want compression like this, our volume is going to go way down. So we have a makeup gain knob to compensate for any volume lost. This is just an example, but as you can see, these 3 controls are really going to play together in an important way as you're working on how you like to use compression. Another great thing about the Polyend Press is that it has a mix knob. So this allows us to introduce what is called parallel compression, which is when you can mix in your compressed signal with the fully dry signal. Again, this is cool to do when you have really intense compression settings. So you can live somewhere in the middle if you like something really intense. Again, this is really useful if you want to use compression as an effect more than just a simple mastering tool, which is totally fun and totally fine. Most people definitely think of compression as a utility, but it can be an effect if you'd like it to be. So we'll come back to these filter knobs, but let's talk about attack, release, and tilt really quickly. Attack and release work just how they do in any other envelope. Attack is going to determine the onset of the compressor, and release will determine how long it takes the compressor to fade out, basically. Daniel from the future here, disciplining Daniel from the past for not making a joke about how, even though Polyend recommends it, I think it's kind of difficult to turn the attack and release knob with your ears because they're in the middle of the pedal. And as you can see, this is really quite visible in the little graphic that we get. And it really affects the sound quite pertinently as well. Lastly, we have the tilt knob, which is a very simple EQ. I may not be as inclined to use this on like a full mix, but rather maybe on a single instrument like a guitar, for example, if the compression introduces some spikiness, as it can when you're playing something with pretty heavy transients. So I think this is a great little tool belt that Polyend has given us in terms of compressing a single instrument or a stereo signal like we have here. I'll go over these two knobs in more detail in just a moment, but I want to explain really quickly. It's basically a filter for the external or internal compression signal. So if you have the high pass filter wide open and the low pass filter wide open, then they're basically not going to be doing anything. They can be used to filter out which frequency of sounds is going to engage the compressor. And again, I'll show you that. It's easier to understand when you have something to listen to kind of show you. And we'll get into some more musical examples when we talk about the external sidechain, which in my opinion is the most fun and exciting thing about this pedal. Okay, time to talk about the external sidechain. So off screen, I have a dig attack with a kick drum. Hopefully you can hear that. And here we're going to implement some more extreme settings because we're only going to be using the compressor when the external audio passes through. And that is very clearly visualized by the graphic here. We can also engage it with this clap sound. And it allows us to add a pulse to an otherwise kind of amorphous, synthy reverb vocoded thing we got going on here. Again, this is a super intense example, but this is sidechain compression, the thing that I love to talk about so much. Let's also take a look at how the attack and release knobs affect this. So that onset is way less sudden. And we can also make a pretty lengthy release time. To be honest though, in this context, I like to leave those controls at their minimum values. Let's talk about the filter section now. So you can see when I'm engaging the kick drum, this value spikes. Now, what if I want to apply a high pass filter to make it so that the kick drum doesn't interact with the signal that's passing through? Well, you just turn up the high pass filter. And it's subtle because this kick isn't all low end. And let's see what that sounds like with our other sample. So this is wide open and closed. Okay, I've actually filtered our kick drum down a bit more so we can have a more drastic example. So this is really cool because if you have a mix with other drums and you just want one element to be affecting the sidechain, which will usually be the kick, you can do that. Let me show you. Here we have a snare or a clap, and we're doing the same thing. So say we just want the signal to duck when the kick is occurring, but not when that clap is occurring. So we have kick reduction, clap with significantly less, but still some reduction. Kind of a silly little beat with that example, but this is just a really simple proof of concept to show you how that works and how you might implement it into your music. I'm going to be using the press as an end-of-signal mastering device for my tabletop sampler and synth setup. It's kind of based around the SP404. Sometimes I use the dig attack for drums and other synths run through the 404. Actually, I can zoom out here and show you a part of it. But yeah, we've pared the table down for this video. It's kind of meant to be a little modular tabletop setup. And I really want to thank Polyend for sending this to me and letting me do a little demo of it. It's very fun to mess around with, and it's honestly exactly what I've been needing for an end-of-chain device to really glue things together on the 404, because I get samples from kind of everywhere on this machine, and it's a nice way to be able to mess around with this stuff live without worrying about using a compressor and a DAW. Thank y'all so much for being patient with me as I waited almost an entire year to upload a video, but I can promise at least 2 more before the end of the year, and we'll see what happens from there. There's a lot that's been going on, and I'll do a little update at the end of my next video. I'm going to do a little video on how I use the 404 because I think it's pretty absurdly good and have been having a lot of fun with it, and I'm actually putting together a live set that I am basing around the 404. So thanks as always for stopping by, and I will catch you next time. Peace.